Okay, we're getting started. March 2026 Garden Talk. And I want to start off by just reiterating who we are. This is Mercy Spring Ranch and what we do. In fact, I'm looking over at families looking at our horses, and what we do is we work with children that have experienced trauma, and they work with the horses. They also do woodworking and other ranch activities. And our season is just getting ready to start. We're about 2 weeks away from our season starting. So all the kiddos will be returning to the ranch, and they'll be out here till the end of October. If you are wanting to get a child into our program, if you check out our website, mercyspringranch.org, and look under sessions, it can give you all the parameters for getting kiddos signed up for our sessions. And we would love to have them out here. So within our ranch and what things are going on, I just want to mention that we last year lost one of our horses. His name was Connor. He was 30 years old, which is very old for a horse, and he suffered a stroke and we lost him. So we have a new horse here that we've been looking for a horse for over a year, and we just purchased Jireh. And we chose his name because Jehovah Jireh means the Lord provides, or the Lord our provider. And we had someone give us a donation so that we could find a new horse. Jireh is 5 years old, so he's just a young guy, and he came off of a big cattle ranch up in Northern California. He has a lot to learn, but he's mostly used to pushing cows around, so now he's learning how to play all the games that we play and do the stuff that the kids do. And he's a big ham and loves to play. So if you guys haven't had a chance to go say hi to him, this is his first event. So he's probably thinking, why are all these people here? But he's very friendly and loves attention. So go say hi to him. Also, it's been a while since I've explained what an heirloom is, and we have a lot of people who misunderstand what heirlooms are. The strict definition is an heirloom is a plant that has been stabilized for at least 50 years. Now we've changed that to mean that it's stabilized over 8 generations, but technically anything that's just stabilized over 8 generations is a open pollinated variety. It is not technically an heirloom until it's at least 50 years old. So even though we have the heirloom plant sale, many of our plants are technically open pollinated. They haven't been around for 50 years yet, so they can't be technically classified as an heirloom. So what the difference in that means is that with heirlooms, everything, because it's been stabilized for so long, you can save seeds from it, replant it the next year, you get the exact same thing you had the year before. If you try to do that with a hybrid, it will revert back to either of its parents or sometimes even the grandparents. And that doesn't mean that it'll be anything like the fruit that you had the year before. It may taste good, it may taste awful, it may produce well, it may not produce at all. There's reasons that somebody hybridized it. They took 2 varieties and crossed them. And sometimes it's disease resistance, and it doesn't matter that variety didn't taste like anything. They just need to get the disease resistance, or they're trying to get high production or things like that. So probably the number one thing I hear people saying on garden pages is, well, heirlooms don't have any disease resistance, and which is hilarious to me, because a hybrid that has disease resistance took 2 open pollinated plants and crossed them. Where do you think they got those open pollinated plants from? They're from these stabilized resistant varieties. So that's why we test. There are over 10,000 varieties of heirloom tomatoes alone that are documented. And because grandma, great-grandma, they saved their seeds and passed them down from generation to generation, the reason that they did that was because they worked really good for them. And back in the day, like, you had to can everything and preserve everything in order to get through the winter. So you weren't going to grow something that didn't produce well. And so someone in Oklahoma may have this awesome tomato that does really good in that red clay with the humidity, and it's disease resistance for the humidity, but you take it to the north where it's colder, and it won't produce well at all. And so that's why we're testing stuff all the time, because even within our area, we have microclimates. We're sitting on the sandiest soil, I think, anywhere other than the beach. And so our sandy soil may do really well for the plants that we're growing, but maybe not for clay soils. And so you have to test them to figure out which ones are going to work for you, which is why we offer so many varieties. And when someone says, I just had someone last week say, well, I tried Russian Big Roma, but it didn't produce really well for me, but San Marzano did. And I'm like, so guess what? Get rid of Russian Big Roma, stick with San Marzano, because that's the one that worked for you. And then we'll have people that order exactly the same plants every year and then add a couple to test. Be like, I always grow this, but I need to try, I want to try this. And so you just keep adding until you find the ones you really love, and then just stick with the ones you really love if you don't want to venture beyond that. Because of the way we run our garden and because we do this, we're constantly testing plants all the time. And even ones that are just being released, once they've got 8 generations of stabilization on them, they get released by the person who's developed them, and then we try to grab some of those. So the ones that we are testing this year, I think we have 6 tomatoes and a couple eggplants that we're testing this year. They will be available at the April plant sale. Then we will also have them growing in the garden and be taking notes of what we like about them or not. And then when we have the tomato tasting in August, then you'll be able to taste them, be able to walk out into the garden and look at the tag and say, oh, that's how big the plant gets, and that's, you know, how it grows, and this is how well it produces, and all that stuff. So it's a great opportunity for you to know what you want to grow the following year, and then you can take notes on it and get it the next year. So so the difference with the other thing that we hear about heirlooms that is not correct is there is a vast difference between GMO and hybrid. Hybrids have been around since biblical times. People were crossing plants. Nature crosses plants all the time. A GMO is something that's been genetically altered in a laboratory that would never happen in nature. So for instance, a couple years ago, there was a big brouhaha because we used to always be able to say, there are no GMO tomatoes. And there were a few that had been developed, but the farmers weren't interested in growing them, and you could not get them. The general public could not get them, because anytime a GMO plant is released or a seed is released, you have to sign an agreement that you will not save seeds from that plant and grow it and sell it. And if you do, the ones who developed it will come after you and they will sue you. And so you don't see that within home gardeners. It's farmers, like they're releasing their GMO seeds to farmers. Well, a couple years ago, a lab in the UK released the first GMO tomato that they marketed to the home gardener. And one of our seed companies accidentally picked it up because it was marketed as not being GMO. And then the company came after them to sue them and told them, get this plant off of your website because it doesn't belong to you, it belongs to us. And we've heard very little about it, but when it first came out and everybody was rushing to order it, it was 4 seeds for $20. And you still had to sign the thing saying you would not save seeds and grow the plant out. So it was pretty crazy. But the thing they did was they crossed a tomato with a snapdragon. And they did that to get the tomato to be blue all the way through and not just on the skin. Apparently it didn't taste very good, but people just thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I, in my gardening groups, immediately started people saying, I got my seeds, I can't wait to start selling them next year. And I'm like, they're gonna sue the pants off you. You're putting it out there on social media. And that's how they're gonna make their money, because they're certainly not gonna make it off of someone who's spending $20 on 4 seeds. Like, there just aren't enough people out there. So you don't really have to worry about GMOs. That's my point, is when you're out there and you see like plants at Home Depot and it says non-GMO certified, you know, it doesn't mean anything. There are no GMOs available for the home gardener other than this one particular company. So hybrids, the reason that hybrids are different is they've been hybridized by somebody for a reason. They keep what they crossed very secret so that you can't turn around and cross the same thing. And they sell the plant year after year. You have to order the plant year after year, because if you save the seeds, you'll get one of the parents. You won't get the actual plant that you had the year before. And most of the time, the reason that they're hybridizing them is for disease control. And tomatoes are notorious for having a lot of different diseases, and almost all of them are caused by high humidity. And so we are in California, Central Valley. We don't have humidity. And so we are a great place to grow heirloom tomatoes because diseases are really easy to control within the heirlooms. And the best way to not have the diseases take off is don't get your plants wet, because then you raise your humidity and that causes the diseases to spread. So we use drip irrigation, we use straw mulch over the top so that even if we get an early rain, it doesn't splash the soil up onto the leaves, because that's how the diseases get started. And then if we see anything starting to take off, we make a note of it. Early blight. And usually within a month, as soon as the rain stops and it warms up, the plant stops the disease that far up, and it's usually like this far from the soil that it'll stop. We prune everything off and it never spreads. But if you live in some place where it rains all summer, that disease gets a hold of a plant and it just takes up the whole plant. So people who live in areas that get rain all summer, or areas that are high in humidity, they will oftentimes only grow hybrids because they need to have that disease resistance to get a crop. But when they're hybridizing plants, they do not care about flavor. So the biggest difference in a hybrid and an heirloom is the flavor. And finding plants that grow well for you, that you can keep the diseases under control, and they have the flavor, that is what everybody wants. And that's why heirlooms in the supermarket are $5 a pound, because they don't have the shelf life, which is another thing they hybridize for, is to grow something that they can stick in the supermarket for 3 or 4 weeks and it will not rot. And heirlooms are not that. You pick them, you eat them. And so, or you can them, or you dry them. So any questions about that before I move on? Yes?
I bought online some Belgium heirloom beauties. They were huge.
Yes.
Did they come from Belgium?
Originally, probably. No, the plants did not, probably, but the original heirloom was probably developed there. But that's a good point too. Don't trust the name of a plant. We have an Aunt Jenny's purple ball that is neither a ball nor purple. And people can name them whatever they want them to. We have a pepper called Sugar Rush Peach that will light your world on fire. But people will grow it because they're like, oh, it's high in sugar. Well, it is high in sugar, but it's also really, really hot. So when people are picking a name, and this is also really interesting with hybrids, like, yeah, there's 10,000 varieties of heirlooms that are marked, but you can change the name to whatever you want in an heirloom. It's open to the public to call it whatever they want to. And sometimes when we're testing a variety, we're like, that seems an awful lot like this one. And then sometimes we'll grow them right next to each other and see if there's any difference. And if there is no difference, we toss one because it's probably the same variety. But with hybrids, when someone, let's just say you were able to break into Burpee headquarters and find out what their best-selling hybrid plant was, what they were using to cross it, and you started crossing it, as long as they can't prove that you stole their records, you can call that whatever you want. You just can't call it what they're calling it. So they own the name. That's why they keep what they've crossed secret. Because if anybody else starts crossing it, they can name it whatever they want and sell it. Yes?
How many varieties do you grow here?
We have over 100 varieties on our list, not the list that went out in pre-orders. We shortened that this year. We have over 100 varieties on our list. We try to keep it down to about that much. So if I'm testing 6 and I'm gonna add 4 from my test, I've got to get rid of 4 to try to keep things under control. And oftentimes we'll just, whichever of something that's similar. So if I have like a Moon Glow and an Earl of Edgecombe, and they're both medium-sized orange. Their flavors are different, but they're both medium-sized orange. When I need to get rid of one of those is going to go, and it'll be the one that doesn't sell as much as the other one. And so we just keep testing them and testing them. We've tested over 600 varieties in the 25 plus years that we've been doing this. And so that's why, like, there are some that we tested on our old property that we lived at for 20 years that we will circle back around and retest them here. That are ones that we crossed off the list because they didn't do well where we were, and they might do well here. And so eventually we'll circle back around and start retesting some of those. One of those that we did years ago, it's called Carbon. It was out here this morning. I don't know if it's sold out. The best tomato I've ever tasted. Now, you know, that's like saying which is the best ice cream in the world. Like, everybody has their own views. So what I think is awesome may not be what other people think is awesome. But for years I called it the caviar tomato because I only got 1 tomato and it was amazing flavor, but it didn't produce. So I crossed it off the list, and I was like, so sad. So I'm like, it was the best tasting tomato and it doesn't produce anything. And somebody in this area when we moved here was saying how much they loved Carbon, and I was like, me too, but I can't get it to produce. And they're like, oh no, like, I get tons off of it. So 2 years ago we tested it again and it did awesome here. So it's just, you know, that microclimate thing of finding stuff that works. And then don't get too serious about what names are. Like, read the descriptions. And if you've bought plants today, take pictures of the card, because then you have all the information in the picture, so that when you get home and you go, I don't remember if this was a cherry tomato or, you know, a red tomato or whatever. If you have a picture of the card, then you can look at it. So, okay, any other questions before I move on? Okay. I've got a couple of things here that I've talked about at the tomato tasting, but I realize that everybody that comes to the plant sales may not be people who come to the tomato tasting. So if you have sandy or loamy soil and you are growing tomatoes in the same place every year, you will eventually get root knot nematodes. And once you've got them, getting rid of them is almost impossible without fumigating your soil with really bad chemicals. So we are always trying to figure out how to get rid of root knot nematodes and how to control root knot nematodes. This property was an almond orchard when we bought it, and root knot nematodes also like almond trees. Didn't know that when we bought the property, and thought, oh, they've never grown tomatoes here, so the soil's just going to be awesome for tomatoes. Well, no, there were already root knot nematodes here, so we're already fighting them. We used to do it with a wild mustard called Kodiak mustard that the farmers use when they pull almond orchards out. You'll see like yellow mustard out in the fields. They grow it as soon as it goes to flower. They till it under, and there's a compound in the Kodiak mustard that kills the root knot nematodes. So we tried to do that. Really hard to do when you've got to get that turned into the soil within 30 minutes of cutting it. And you're not using a giant tractor in a field. So it was tricky working with that. So a couple of years ago, some folks started talking about how they were testing using chopped up crab shells and lobster shells. And there is a compound in the shells called chitin that also kills root knot nematodes and controls them. Luckily, this stuff is super cheap. We put 1 to 2 tablespoons in each planting hole. This is Neptune's Harvest. And we just throw it in the hole, mix it in, and then plant the plant. We have not seen root knot nematode damage in the last 2 years since we've been using this. And we were seeing it at the beginning, but the soil was also really unhealthy. So the plants were struggling already, and then the root knot nematodes just attacked them. Yeah.
What was the variety of mustard again?
Kodiak.
Kodiak.
Yeah. And it gets about this tall. And you cut it when it's flowering, and then you have to turn it into the soil within 30 minutes. Yeah. So now when you're driving around and you see where, oh, there used to be an orchard there and now there's all these yellow flowers, that's why they're doing it. A lot of them are starting to plant them in the middle of rows in the orchards. Yeah, and they're also do it in grape vineyards, planting the Kodiak mustard. Yeah. So, but this is much easier as a home gardener. And then the last thing as far as our little tricks, and we've got a lot of them. If you guys have never used these, this is a company in California called Digger's Gopher Guard. These are triple galvanized wires, so they are not like chicken wire, and the holes are super tiny. I have some of these that are over 15 years old. Chicken wire will never last more than 1 or 2 years. It just rusts in the ground. And I will tell you, my cages from last year are still in the ground because I haven't gotten a chance to pull them out. So I do not take care of them. And they still last a really long time. You sink these in your planting hole for your tomatoes, and you leave about 1 inch to 2 inches above ground, and then you plant your tomato plant inside of it, and the gophers can't get to it. They just go around it. So this is the only way, if you walk in our garden, you'll see, yes, we have lots of gophers. This is the only way that we can have tomatoes, because they'll just completely disappear if we don't have these cages on them. And then the last thing I was going to mention, if you've already been in there, you've seen we have worms for sale. And the reason is we have 2 different kinds of composting piles. One is vermicomposting, which is worms. The other one is O2 composting, which is forced air. When you make compost, you need organic matter, moisture, and oxygen. And with our forced air system, there's tubes underneath it that forces the air up through it so that we don't have to constantly turn it to get air to the compost. But the worm system, those little suckers work harder than anything else on this planet, and they reproduce so fast it blows your mind. So you take a little container like that of them and you throw them in your compost, and then just make sure you keep it damp and you keep adding food to it. And they will reproduce and run through the whole thing and turn it into compost and worm castings in short order. And so that's why we offer them, so that folks can get started getting their vermicomposting done. You don't need to turn it. You don't need to fuss with it. The worms do all of the work. And then when you are ready to start pulling the compost, you just dig in it until you get past the worms and start pulling it out. Yes?
What if you're not composting? Would it be good to add them to the garden?
You can, and I've never done this, but I've seen people doing it that have the raised beds where they stick a 5-gallon bucket in the middle and with holes drilled all in it, and they throw their kitchen scraps in the middle, and the worms come in and get the organic matter and then go back out and feed the plants. And people swear by it. I've never done it because we don't need to. But the idea of you want as many worms as you can in your soil. But one of the big mistakes that we in this country have been making for decades is that we are a till people. We like to till our soil, turn it under before we plant, and that kills all the good stuff. And so when we first got out here, we started doing no-till in a couple of beds, but I was really suspicious because I'm like, how in the world are you going to get all this beautiful stuff down into the soil if you don't till it? But when you till it, you kill all your worms. You also kill I want to make sure I say it right, mycorrhiza, which is it's a actual fungus that's in your soil that your plants need in order to grab nutrients out of the soil. So if mycorrhiza is missing, then your plants, even if you add the fertilizers, they can't grab it and pull it into their roots and feed the plant. And so we've had people send us before, I dug in my garden, there's all this mildew in my garden. It's like white powdery looking stuff in their soil. That's mycorrhiza, and it's good. You don't want to kill it. You want it to keep going. Mushrooms are also really good for your soil. You don't want to get rid of them. If they're growing in your garden, celebrate and leave them alone, because they're actually helping your soil to be alive and have all of the bacteria that you need. Yes. Yeah, the mushrooms are good. Do not get rid of them. There is a big difference between the fungus that's killing your tomato plants and mushrooms and mycorrhiza. They're night and day different. One is good, one is bad. So when you see those things, you do not have powdery mildew in your soil. You have mycorrhiza. That is good. You will start to notice now, because people are finding out what that is, all of the potting soils, like you'll see the upper end potting soils say with mycorrhiza on it, because it's a selling point, because people are learning, I need to have this in my soil in order for my plants to be healthy. And so when we bought this place, it was commercially farmed for 35 years. The soil here was dead, like deader than dead. There was nothing healthy or organic or composty at all in this soil. And so when we took over the garden and started working on it, the first couple of years out here were awful. Like the plants struggled, even though we were composting, even though we were fertilizing, we were doing it in dead soil. And it took 3 years for the soil to come back to life, and did it a lot faster and a lot more stable because we are not tilling it. And so when we add our compost and when we add our fertilizer and when we add mulches, we set them right on top and we let nature grab it. This is how God created the earth to work. Nature grabs it, pulls it down into the soil, and feeds all of your plants, and keeps the mycorrhiza going, keeps the worms reproducing. And as long as you've got compost and mulches in your garden beds, the worms will keep reproducing. So having healthy soil, a lot of times when you're struggling and you've got diseases going crazy and you've got plants that just aren't thriving and all this stuff, it's probably because your soil is dead. Even if you're feeding it compost, and even if you're feeding it fertilizers, you need to get the bacteria and the fungal life back into that soil. So, and you do that by not tilling it. Okay? Questions? I love the science part of this stuff. Okay. So, if you've been here before, you will notice our greenhouse is new, and we love it. It has been an ordeal, and my husband, I don't know where he is, but he takes the credit for 90% of that happening because he's the one that screamed and yelled and threw himself on the ground trying to make that work. There he is right there. My greenhouse. So that was my grandfather's greenhouse, and he was a biochemist for Shell Chemical, and he grew rare orchids that he collected from all over the world. And when he passed away, my mom and my uncle said, we want to donate this to the ranch. Well, it was sat on a cinder block pony wall. So it was a kit, but it was never intended to be taken apart, and it was never intended to be polycarbonate all the way down to the ground. It was intended to sit on a pony wall. And I didn't want cinder block because I wanted light all the way down to the bottom. It was also untempered glass, which was not fun taking apart 13 years ago. And we broke a lot of the pieces, but also because we're a children's program, we can't have untempered glass where the kids are. So we made it polycarbonate, which also meant we had to change it. And then the third thing was it only had one door, and I wanted two. So he had to fabricate this door that's closest to us so that we had a pass-through door. So it's amazing. It's still not finished. It's just usable. And we were able to never have to put our old greenhouses together every season ever again, and moved into it about 2 weeks after the seedlings started coming outside. So now we're running that, and we absolutely love it. But we have a lot of people asking us, we used a grant to put it back together. It was quite expensive. But what are you gonna do with it during the summertime? Because it's way too hot in there to grow anything. Well, thanks to a homesteader that we follow, we found out that you can turn it into a dehydrator. And so we are going to be running solar fans to keep the air moving, and we're going to be dehydrating all of our stuff. I have a dehydrator about this big that I will never use again if this works.
You also have a 19 by 14 foot.
Yeah, we're going to have the biggest dehydrator in San Joaquin County.
It has to run at what is minimum 180?
180 degrees to do meat and 140 degrees to do vegetables.
It will not be a problem.
No.
At all.
At all. I say that to say at the tomato tasting, hopefully we will have like dehydrated tomatoes and herbs and stuff like that available too. And then I want to, before I go to questions, if there's anybody that has questions, I have a little freebie. If you were not at the tomato tasting, this will be the first time you're hearing about this, but we test other stuff besides tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants. We just don't sell them. And so one of the things that we tested last year is this guy right here. This is a small one. It's called zucchini rampicante. And it grows, you can grow it on the ground, but the best way to grow it is where you take the wire and you make a hoop and it grows up over the top. And then the zucchini will hang down and you get them straighter. The ones that are curled are usually the ones that were touching the ground or had something to get in their way. And if they're not hanging, they'll grow in a circle. In the summer, when it's producing and they're green, you eat them like a zucchini. You can eat the skin, you can eat the whole thing other than, and the seeds aren't there yet, so you can eat the whole thing. In the winter time, if you leave it hanging, it turns orange. Now it becomes like a butternut squash. And so at the tomato tasting last year, we let some of them go orange and we roasted it and had everybody taste it. And it's sweet like a butternut squash, and the entire neck has no seeds in it, so it's like a solid piece of squash, and then the seed head is down here. So just like a butternut squash where you get to the seed head, it's thinner, but you can still eat it. You know, you just have, you're going to have the seed taking up part of it. This is from last summer, and we are still eating them. Just storing them in the cool but you have to let them turn orange in order for them to store. We had 6 plants, 6 vines that we stuck in the ground. We picked over 200 pounds in the fall. That didn't count all the ones that we were picking as fresh zucchini during the summer, and we were eating a lot of it, and all of our staff were eating a lot of it. So it produces quite well. I have a picture of me on our Facebook page of me holding 2 of them up like this, and they're almost to the ground. So really, really big. So Miss Ellie here is going to help me. And those of you who want seeds, we're going to give you a seed packet. Yep. Just hand them all out to them. So they are direct seed. You do not need to start them indoors early. So this is the time of year that go ahead and stick them in the ground if you want to do direct seeding. You can start them in pots and then put them in later, but you don't have to. They've got a long enough season here that all you have to do is just start the seeds. We will never not grow this. We love it so much that we will never not grow it. So think of your friends and prepare to freeze, because when you get to the end of the season and you've got, like, you know, this thing right here would last us like 6 meals. And the big ones, like, you're gonna have to cube them and freeze them. So enjoy, and then come back and tell us how you like it.
I'm so glad you're doing this, because I saw them growing last year. When I got the list, I was like scanning for them.
Yeah, and we have people ask us all the time, are you gonna do cucumbers? Are you gonna do squash? Are you gonna do melons? We're like, nah, we're gonna stick with tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants, and we'll throw something funky in, you know, every once in a while. But if you are looking for those things, Lorena's Edible Garden here in Escalon opens next weekend, and she has all of the other summer stuff in plants. She does a lot of hybrids, but she will usually have a few heirlooms too. But buy from her rather than from Home Depot. The plants are going to be much nicer coming from her, and she grows a lot of different stuff.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Enjoy them.
So we just put them into the ground now.
Yes. Yep. We're warm enough now that if you plant them now, they're going to start sprouting, and they sprout quickly. Squash sprouts within a week. The only nice thing about starting them in seed trays is that you know which ones are going to germinate, so you don't have empty spots in your bed. But you don't need, we have to start our tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants starting in the end of January, because our growing season isn't long enough for us to get a full crop if we don't start them early. But you can't start them outside that early. But there are a lot of crops that we can stick right in the ground and grow them, and squash is one of them. And so, yeah, just wherever you're going to plant it, prepare for large, and then just stick them in the ground there and let them go. And at the end, save your seeds, because it's an heirloom, not a hybrid, so you can have them for next year. Also, one other thing too, tomatoes very rarely cross-pollinate on their own in your garden, because the male and the female are both in the same flower, and so the very tiniest bit of breeze makes that flower pollinate without bees, without pollinators. Squash is not like that. They have a big huge male flower and a big huge female flower, and every single bug that gets in there spreads the pollen. So if you have another type of squash near this, you're going to get them cross-pollinated. So if you are saving seeds for it, then it's not going to be what you want. You're going to hybridize it on accident. And it may be great, or it may taste horrible, or it may not produce well.
Put it on the other side of the garden then?
The recommendation is at least 100 feet away from each other, but they can still, if that bee has a lot of he may just crawl right in there. So because we don't do a lot of squash, and we wanted to save seed from this, we planted no other squash last year. We didn't plant any other squash, because a squash isn't going to cross with a cucumber, and a cucumber isn't going to cross with a melon. They cross with others of the same kind, and so and they all have big flowers. So if you have 2 cucumbers, the bees are going to cross-pollinate them. If you have 2 different kinds of melon, they're going to cross-pollinate.
How long does it take to actually get a vegetable out of a...
Gosh, if you go on the Baker Creek website and you type in zucchini rampicante, anytime you're looking at a seed company, they give you a number of days, and that's from the day of putting it in the ground till the day you're picking the first fruit. And off the top of my head, I don't remember. We put ours in, and we started them in seed trays. We put them in sometime in April, and I think by early June we were picking the first zucchinis to eat fresh. Yeah, it's pretty quick. Yeah, it just takes a long time for them to get to the winter squash. Yeah, phase. But okay, so are there any garden questions, garden problems, I'm gonna stump you, that you want to ask? Because this was the stuff I was covering.
It's not a stumpy question, but
Okay.
In regards to that, when it gets to that stage, have you ever made I used to make pumpkin pie that used butternut squash.
I didn't.
You haven't? Okay.
But you could, because I've used butternut squash, and a lot of the canned pumpkin in the market is actually butternut squash.
Yeah.
So, and because it's so similar in sweetness and consistency, I would think you could.
Okay. I was just wondering if it was going to get a little more watery or whatever.
They are watery, and even when you eat them fresh as a zucchini, they still have a denser meat than a regular zucchini does, and more flavor than a regular zucchini does. So,
My 2 cents is that thing's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the best.
I had
flavor.
one of our kiddos in our sessions that she was volunteering last year at the tomato tasting, and we handed out the samples of them roasted, and this little girl was like, Mom, we've got to grow that. Mom, I want this. Mom. And it's like when you've got a kid saying that.
It's pretty crazy the amount of things that's out. It's awesome.
It's nuts.
Really good.
Yeah,
Really
it's
good.
nuts. Oh, and use heavy wire. I made the mistake of using the thin concrete wire that we make tomato cages out of. It collapsed it right in the middle because of the weight. So we had to put 2x4s down the,
You
the
want to
middle
use
to hold
hot
it up.
metal, and then probably still put some supports on it. It's a lot of weight. I mean, once that thing was full, it's pretty crazy. Those things they're pretty stout. And we had at one point probably 12, 14 of them.
Of
on
the
there.
really big ones that we were letting turn orange.
Okay.
So it grows like a vine, so like a tree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you just do a round trellis and then put them, I only put them on one side because I wasn't sure how long it would get. And it grew about 3/4 of the way. So it never did hit the ground on the other side. So you could plant it on both sides and let it go this way.
And the fruit drops in between. So, so it
Yeah,
comes up
and that's
it's
how you get the
tame.
straight.
Okay.
If you don't, like I had some, when the vines got really thick, I had some that were up on top and I couldn't see that they were there because there was so much green. So they sat on top and they just curled around like a snake.
Okay.
And so then once we got to the fall and all the leaves were falling off in the late fall, I was like, oh, look, there's more up there. And then, you know, you're trying to like reach over and get them and pull this 30-pound squash off the top of your trellis. So, yes.
So how many plants? I have a little A-frame, but I don't have any hog panels. Yeah. Could I put one seed, get one plant going? Would it give me several?
You could, because I had 6 plants. That's all I had was 6 plants. I did 6 of them down the side, and I got, like I said, over 200 pounds of just the mature ones. And we were picking the other ones all summer long.
I'm gonna do maybe 2 different.
Or make friends, because you know that's why they say to lock your doors in the country, because your neighbors will get in your kitchen and leave you zucchini. Yeah, so you may get this in your kitchen instead. So you know that's a great way to make friends, is just give the extras to people.
Okay, just to pick your brain, how often do you water your tomato plants and how often do you fertilize your tomato plants?
Okay, so we fertilize with a slow release organic spike from Job's. When we plant, we put 8 spikes, they're little spikes about this big, put 8 of them around each plant, and we don't fertilize again until usually late August, if we fertilize in late August. Now that's to say, now that our soil is super healthy, the fertilizer isn't as important. If I don't get to it, I don't see a really big difference. Where you're gonna see a big difference is if you're growing in pots, because you're leaching your nutrients out of your soil faster, and you're really gonna, if you're growing in pots, you're not gonna have that whole biome of good bacteria and fungus and stuff growing in potting soil. The potting soil, by the way, is sterilized. I don't know if you knew that, but they cook it to kill any bacteria that's in it before they bag it, which is good, because when you're growing in pots, you're heating the stuff up, because the sides are all exposed to the heat, and when it heats it up, it kills the good stuff, but it also expands the bad stuff. So that's why they sterilize the soil before they bag it for potting soil. Unless you see with mycorrhiza, and that means that the soil is alive, but it often will not survive in a pot because of the temperature change and how much you're having to water it. If you're in the ground, you have to water a whole lot less, and especially if you're mulching. So we are, like I said, we are sand, and when I say sand, I mean like the hardest rain we've gotten here, where we're in 6 inches of water, is gone within 45 minutes. And there have been core samples taken by neighbors here where they went 10 feet deep and it was still sand. So we are extremely, extremely sandy. Our drip heads are 2-gallon drip heads. So that means that they release 2 gallons of water every hour. and we are running them 45 minutes every other day. That would not be nearly enough if we didn't have the amount of organic matter that we have in our soil, and that we are mulching the top with straw so that it's not evaporating, and also so that the weeds aren't taking hold, stealing the nutrients and the water from the plants. So all of those things factor in that you would have to water more, and it's really hard. People ask that question all the time, how much do I water them? Well, it's like, if you have clay, if you watered as much as we did, they'd be standing in water all the time. And if you have loam, it's going to go slower. If you're adding a lot of organic matter, it's going to be different than if there isn't organic matter. If you're growing them in pots, you're going to be watering them every day, and probably a lot. And then you're going to have to fertilize them more because you're leaching all of that fertilizer out of your soil. So it's just different for every person, and that's why gardening is an experiment. Like, you know, people will say, I'm a horrible gardener. I'm like, so am I. You should see the stuff I did last year. You know, I'm like failing constantly at stuff, but that's how you learn. You fail and then you change stuff and figure out what works better for you. So, good question though.
How long can you store the...
Well, this was from last year. And it's still good.
You just stick it like...
I had them when it was really cold outside. I had them in the garage because there were so many of them, and our garage is insulated. So once it gets cold, it stays cold. Once it gets hot, it stays hot. Then once it started warming them up, we moved them into, we have a kitchenette in one of our shops that has a concrete floor because we're on a raised foundation. So it actually is keeping them cooler a little bit longer. I think I have 6 of these left, and all of our staff have been like, no, I don't want any more straw. So, and I've frozen probably as much as we're gonna eat before we start getting them. But I would say that probably this has another month. And the harder you let the skin get, the longer it's going to store, because the skin, you know, it keeps the moisture inside. And so that's what keeps it from rotting. And as long as there are no blemishes, like I had one, I didn't take it off soon enough, and we got some cold weather, and it got a little split in it from the cold, and within like a week it rotted. And I just didn't get to it. Which then I throw them to the chickens, because nothing goes to waste around here. Either the chickens are going to get it or the compost pile is going to get it, and the worms will eat it. So everything's cyclical as far as how we're running here. I will say though, we do not put our tomato vines in our compost. Eventually, someday, when we have our big forced air system, we'll be able to do that because it heats the soil and the compost up to 140 to 180 degrees. And that kills all of the bad stuff, including weed seeds, fly eggs, and diseases. But right now, because we don't get hot enough, and if there is any early blight on a tomato vine, even if it wasn't something that took it over, if I throw it into my compost, the worms aren't going to kill the early blight. And so now all my compost is going to have early blight in it. And so we haul off all of our tomato vines at the end of the season so that we don't perpetuate that. So, anything else?
Do you get that online? Your,
this?
Yes.
I did, because Amazon makes everything easy.
I know it.
And I don't have to worry about how long it's going to take to get there, because they tell me before I order it.
I'll be here at 4 a.m. tomorrow.
Exactly, yeah. And we know who's in your living room. So, because literally I say things and then it shows up on my news feed. So, but yeah, so I think I got it on Amazon.
You're planting one plant and putting some of that in the hole with
Yeah.
it? How much are you putting?
2 tablespoons. Yeah, I do 2 tablespoons because number one, it's so cheap, and you can't overdo it. But number 2, because we're in sand, and I know we've got nematodes. So it's got calcium in it. So if you have problems with blossom end rot, if any of you guys know what blossom end rot is, that's a calcium issue. It's not a disease issue, and it's oftentimes not because there's not calcium in your soil. It's because your watering is too intermittent and the plant can't grab the calcium and pull it up to the fruit. So most of the time you can get rid of blossom end rot problems by just having consistent watering. And if you're you're consistently watering it, but you're still having blossom end rot, you're probably not watering enough. Because calcium is a big, what do you call it? Grain, you know. It takes a lot of water for the plant to grab it and pull it up through the roots. So if you let your plants dry out, the roots shrink up, and then they can't take up the calcium once you start watering it again, or water it more. So, but this does put calcium in your soil if you are one of those rare people that's low on calcium in your soil.
So can you use that on all the vegetables?
Absolutely. It won't hurt anything. It may not help anything. Like not every vegetable is has a problem with root knot nematodes. Root knot nematodes just happen to really love tomatoes. They will occasionally attack a pepper, but I mean, I had really bad root knot nematodes at our other property, and I think of one time I found them on my peppers, on a particular pepper. But they're very attracted to tomatoes. They're attracted to carrots. If you've ever pulled up a carrot and it's all like this, it's because you've got root knot nematodes. They attack the root. They make it knot. That's why they're called root knot nematodes. Not, but not. And so how do you know that you have root knot nematodes? You pull your plants up at the end of the season, your tomato plants, and they look like they have warts all over the roots. And usually if you have a high amount of root knot nematodes, you'll have your plant come up in the spring. It looks beautiful. You're like, yes, we're gonna have a great garden. And then it gets, halfway grown and it starts dying. And usually within a week to 2 weeks, it's dead. And that's not disease, that's root knot nematodes. Yeah. And then just immediately pull the plant up and it'll tell you you've got root knot nematodes because it'll be all over the roots. Yes, and that's the other thing. If you do not have root knot nematodes in your soil, rotate at least every 3 years. That means that the tomato is not going in that spot for at least 3 years. If you have root knot nematodes, they can survive without food for up to 10 years. And that's why I say, don't get them to begin with. But if you've got them, control them, because they will completely take over and they cannot travel past where the roots were. So you've got your plant right here. The roots, let's say they went out 2 feet. You will have nematodes up to 2 feet away from where that plant was, but not 2.5 feet, because they can't travel past where the roots were. So you don't necessarily have to move a long distance, but you do have to rotate them around. And so like ours, because we had a very small garden, I shouldn't say very small, it was big for in town, but not like this garden. We were rotating into the bed on the 3rd year because we didn't have enough room to not do that. And that's why we had root knot nematodes so bad. So when we got out here, we set the garden up so that it'll be 7 to 10 years before a tomato goes back into that bed. And there'll be all kinds of other stuff going into that bed, but there won't be tomatoes for 7 to 10 years. Chickens. She asked, how do you control hornworms? Yes. Okay, so there is an organic product. We're organic in the garden, so I'm not going to tell you not to use chemicals, but I would never use chemicals. There is a product called BT, which is, if somebody knows how to pronounce it, go for it. BT. Yeah, we call it BT because it's a really long word. And it is a bacteria that when you spray it on your plants, it eats, I know this is gross, but it eats the skin off of all worms and caterpillars, not earthworms, but caterpillars. So if you have cabbage loopers, which we do because we have alfalfa and they live in the alfalfa, and they will eat your cabbages, any of your cruciferous stuff they'll eat, and they'll also eat your petunias, which drives me crazy, and they're the little green worm, they're about this big. It'll kill them, and all you do is just spray it on the plants that you see damage.
Do you use it?
Yes. Yeah, it's a natural product. It doesn't hurt anything. The one thing is it stinks. You know, it's a stinky bacteria. So if you get it on your hands, you want to wash your hands. But it comes in a concentrate. You just get a spray bottle. You put like a teaspoon in your spray bottle, add water. You spray it on there, and it kills all caterpillars. So that to say, it'll also kill caterpillars for butterflies. So if the caterpillar is, it has to be on contact. So if you have like monarch butterflies on your milkweed, I would not be spraying your milkweed with it because it will kill the monarch butterfly caterpillars. Yeah. But great for hornworms.
Wait till you see the worm. Don't spray.
No, wait till you see the damage. Yeah, you don't have to. How hard? It's so hard to see the worm. Unless if you get oh darn it, black light. Get a black light and go out there at night and shine it on your plants, and all the little worms glow. And you go, there you are. Or you can go out at dusk and listen if you've got a really quiet neighborhood and you can hear them going. Just look at what it says. And you can usually find them, yeah. Because the hornworms are huge. If you guys don't know what a hornworm is, I mean, they're massive. That's why my chickens love them. Yeah, it's, you know, when you tell people just step on them, it's like, because it's the thing is like the size of a potato, like, you know. Yeah, and they will strip a plant. Like, you'll go out one day and you see one leaf that's missing its, you know, side leaves, and then the next day you come out and the whole plant has nothing but stems. And you're like, now I know I've got a hornworm issue. Yeah. So yeah, but BT will kill it. Will kill them. Yeah. And they love tomatoes, which is why they're called tomato hornworms. Yeah. Anything else? You guys, thank you so much for listening. And hopefully we'll see you back here in April.
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome.